Okay, in this video I'm going to show how to make a bundle bow. This one turns out to be about roughly just shy of 40 pounds when you pull it at my draw length, which is about 30 inches or so. Um, and it's made of willow. And so I'm going to do a couple of shots here and then I'll show you how to make one. And depending on the dimensions, depending on how much you can pull, you can make one stronger or lighter depending on your needs. But it's basically a bush bow, something you can make quick and dirty in the bush if you don't have any weapons to hunt game or protect yourself. All right, to start our bundle bow, I've got four willow staves here. I'm just picking willow because they're kind of easy to get to in my area. They're quite easy to handle and manipulate. Other types of woods you can use. And again, this is supposed to be a quick and dirty way to make a hunting tool to procure meat via small game, maybe a deer if you can get close enough. Or ambush them, camouflage ambush, So, there's all kinds of woods you can use. This is time for a discovery or for you to implement. If you have hickory in your area or a bunch of scrub oak, just whatever you want to try, just should be thin enough for you to manipulate, you know, versus a solid one piece, one self bow. This is more or less, you have inferior material, you have a bunch of scraggly material, but it's abundant, so you can put a bunch together to make a stronger, solid piece. Okay, I hope you follow me on that. Anyways, on the inside here, we have two longer pieces. Those are approximately 60 inches long or 5 feet. Okay, and then the outer two shorter pieces, here and here, the one on the far right, those are 45 inches long. Okay, I'll get the diameters, but they tend to taper. So, for these, I'll get the width around each ones that I've chosen, but I don't think that's really a big deal at this stage. I'll give the thickest piece first. So at least you can have an idea of what size you're dealing with. And I'm of medium build, so if you're a bigger person, you might need something a little bigger. If you can pull back more weight. If you're a smaller person, you might need something smaller. So on and so forth. The idea is to get at least 40 pounds in draw, from your draw length. So from either the corner of your mouth to an extended hand that's holding the bowl. And then your opposite hand is pulling back and locking at your cheek, or the corner of your lip. That draw length should be approximately 40 pounds. I believe in most regions that's about what it would take to take down a deer. Not quite sure what the yardage is. Again, hunting is a science. You hunters out there, I'm an urban fella. You hunters out there that do it annually, daily, you can fill in the blanks with comments below, and or do your own video with the more precise information. Anyways, I've got my tape measure here that's measuring approximately 8 inches from the end of the longer two staves here, and that is approximation on each side here. So 8 inches to 8 inches. So the next step is we're going to bind the first two up here, and then we're going to bind together the middle two, the four together at where they meet, and then do the same thing at the other end. Bind the four here, and then bind the ends here. and then of course we'll bind the center where we'll grip the weapon. So that's the next step. Again, quick and dirty, pretty rustic. Okay, one thing to keep in mind before we start bundling things together with cordage is that oftentimes doing this type of bow building, you will have pieces of your staves that are thicker on one end than they are the other, just based on the way that they grew. So that the thicker part would have been the root end, of course, and then this would have been the branch end where all the leaves and stuff would be growing towards the sun. Okay, so when you have two of these, what you need to do really is stagger them. So the two shorter ones on the outside are both thick end facing this way to upward here. If you notice the two in the middle, the longer pieces, they are opposite. There's a thin and then there's a thick. So what I'm going to do is take a minute, and I'm using my phone camera. So I'm just going to take this and then just shift this. Okay? So that will balance out, especially if the staves are of similar diameter. So that'll balance out. So what happens is you have the thin end meeting with the thicker end of the outside staves, and on the longer staves, the thin end is meeting with the thicker end, and vice versa on the opposite end. So very, very important point. Otherwise, you're going to have kind of a, if everything is thin up top and everything is thick on the bottom, it won't bend or tiller the same. Okay, it'll favor the stronger side. There may be times that that's useful, not quite sure, but it seems to work that you need to have the thin cooperating with the thick. Okay, to start bundling, we're going to take our long staves, and again, the smaller end versus the thicker end, or the bottom end next to the top end, and we're going to try to make sure that they're flush together. And we want to go about 2 inches, and I'm eyeballing this, about 2 inches from the top, because we need to leave rooms to make nocks for the bowstring. Okay, so I've got my cordage here, and I've got a big spool of it, and it's just regular old rough twine. You could use lashings from bark. Willow has been dried pretty long, so trying to strip the bark off of it to make as a lashing would probably be difficult. The bundle bows tend to be better for green wood, meaning freshly harvested materials. Again, they're not meant to last. They're not going to be heirloom pieces or anything like that. I mean, they could be, I suppose, depending on how your craftsmanship is, but the idea is to make them, you know, for a quick and dirty weapon, to get food or hunting or to protect yourself, right? When you don't have anything better. So I'm going to start off with this sort of loop here, and I'm just going to hold this in place, and I'm just going to start my wrap. I'm not doing whipping, and the reason why I'm not doing common whipping is because sometimes they want to slip in between the staves, which can be a bit can cause some problems. It'll come undone. So I'm just going to do this type of wrapping just to bundle these together, and they should be side by side. Doesn't have to be ultimately like pretty or anything like that. You know, if you had leather, you could do it, so on and so forth. And then right about here, I don't need a terrible bunch of length of it. I'm going to slip this between our staves as best as possible, like that. That way I can split the two ends of a cordage here and can start to do, I'm going to do a double overhand loop like this. This type of cordage seems to want to fight, and that'll kind of hold this down, and then I can take the longer end, go around the other's opposite side and do the same thing, double overhand knot, and then do to finish it off with a single overhand, like that. And that should do it. That should hold these two in place. Okay. If we need more, we can use more. But the problem with that is it adds more weight to your weapon, and the cast of the bow, meaning the snap. You know, when you release the bowstring, the snap of the bow that transfers the kinetic energy to the projectile, the arrow, through the bowstring, could be weaker because there's more weight on the ends, if that makes sense. Again, there's tons of science on bows and bow making, and basically being a bowyer, making bows and such things. Same as gunsmithing, you know, the type of grain of bullet, type of weapon that's firing it, etc., etc. There's all kinds of it's a fascinating, both disciplines, gunsmithing and ancient weaponry, specifically projectile weaponry, are very, very interesting to me, and provide a lot of you know, they're just physics, you know, just starts to blow my mind. Anyways, so that's our first binding here. Our second binding is we're going to add the other two staves, and we want them to be approximately 8 inches down. So we're going to be starting about right here, and we're going to be binding them together. So following our concept of thick versus thin, we kind of want to make this bundle bow ovular or elliptical, you know, it's, you know, circular, versus like flat, because the way I laid them out on the floor, you know, you could get a wide thing like that. Things are going to shift. Okay, so what we want to do is we just kind of want to put the one, this is a thicker end, on the inside like this, approximately 8 inches down, like that. Okay, and then we want to put the other one that has the smaller end on the opposite side, similarly like that. Okay, so what I prefer to do is get this rassled down first, and then come back and add the smaller end, because this is a thicker end. Just by its very nature, it's gonna be a little bit more resistant, just because it's stronger, it's tougher. So again, we make our loop, get that through there. Okay, so we make our loop here. You can cinch it quite tight. This is on camera. Okay, and just again, like we did before, just start binding. Okay, a couple of times around, and then now I may add in the other piece, or other smaller piece on the back side, like that. That'll help wrangle everybody together. And again, we could probably add a little bit more when you know, before it's all done. But as far as cordage, add a little bit more cordage there. Yeah, and that's the whole point. So we're just wrapping it like this. Okay. Now we're running out, and that's okay, right? So we're gonna cinch this between here, so I can split these two off and make a knot. I'd rather make a knot, which I'm going to call on this is of the inside here, or the belly, versus the spine, which would be the back. Just for aesthetics, quick and dirty, or based on how much resources you got, doesn't really matter as long as the thing works. All right, we worry about pretty once we get our stomachs full in a survival situation. At least that's the idea. And I'm going to double overhand this one. To make a good knot. Okay, and I'm going to wrap this again, but this time a little bit more make sure that this is secure on the back end. Okay, so I'm not going to go through show all that, but so again, conceptually, at least you have an idea of what we're working with here. Again, this is my big old spool of twine I've got to work with. I'm gonna get a little bit more than I think I need, and I'm gonna go and try and wrap this. Get this all cinched in together. Okay, we've got this, at least the upper part, pretty much bound together, right? And again, we're trying to make it more or less kind of, elliptical, so it's actually nice to hold on to. Because if it was flat, we'd have to taper out the middle and the handle so you can grip it properly. We're not doing that because that's not what a bundle bow is about. Okay, so cinch these together, and so what we need to do next is find the middle of our length, approximate middle of our length, and bind that together. That we may have, I think we could get away with the regular binding that we're using now. To strengthen it, we might need to do some whipping, and then what happens is once we get the middle all wrangled in, then we just do the same thing we did on this end with the shorter ends, and then the end ends, the very tips. Excuse me, I'm trying to get that on camera. The very tips here. So that's really how it works. Again, cordage wise, I'm using, some twine bought at the store, like a whole bunch of it. So it makes it easy to perform these types of tasks in the comfort of my home versus being out in the woods and you got to find everything and fight ticks and fight no-see-ums and gants and gnats and mosquitoes and things like that. But this gives you an opportunity to know what you need to work with. To make a bundle bow, again, you most likely be using green saplings, green limbs, and they're easy to get the bark off, and you can use the bark as your cordage. As far as a bowstring, your shoestrings could work, parts of your clothing could work. If you don't know your plants, or if their plants are not mature enough to harvest, there are roots that you can use, like spruce roots, that you can dig up, that would be strong enough. So you just need something strong enough. Hopefully we'll be able to dive into the addle, but that's a whole nother beast in that you have to be really pretty close to your quarry and have some accuracy. What ancient peoples used to do was basically, with a tribe or a group of hunters, the men would go out and basically run down the animal till they were too tired to move. And if you're able to do that, say with a rabbit or something like that, you can get it to the point where it's just too tired to move, and then you can close in. But that's a whole nother story. It's very hard to demo without being cruel to the animal, but you can certainly look that sort of type of hunting up, and it does work. So anyways, I'm going to get to finding out what the middle is on this, and then we're going to start wrapping it. Alright, so the next step is trying to find the approximate middle of our bundle bow, right? And so what I did to make it easy, because you may not have a ruler in the middle of the woods somewhere. Again, with that sort of thing, when we talk about like 2 inches, down, it's important to know your own body measurements. So I know from the base of my right thumb to the tip of it is approximately 2 inches. And so you can use that part. If you know that one thing about your body, you can start to use that as an approximation of measurement. whether you measure in centimeters, millimeters, or inches. Again, the regular apportionate human body, when you outspread your arms, should be your approximate height, and that's including your fingertips. From from one fingertip, your left fingertip, through your shoulders to your other fingertip should be your approximate height. So if you're 6 foot and you outstand, you want to measure some string or cordage, and you go across your body, that should be approximately 6 feet of cordage. Okay, so in a situation where you don't have measuring tools, if you know one part of your body is equal to this, obviously the half of my thumb is going to be about an inch. So I can start using that as increments of measurement if one needs to be that precise, right? Otherwise, you can just eyeball it. So anyways, I took a piece of cordage that is approximately the length of our soon-to-be bundle bow. Okay, and all I had to do was just, I could do the math, obviously. This is supposed to be 60 inches long, right? And find out the approximate middle. But in case you don't know that, sometimes you just take a piece of string or cordage or whatever, put it in half, take it from the top, hold it there, and I find the approximate middle. And I've already you can use charcoal or a Sharpie or a pen or a knife and make tick marks so you know where you're beginning with. And I'm about right here. So this is where my hands would be holding this thing. Okay, so I've got middle-sized hands versus people that may have smaller hands or larger hands, right? And I kind of want to start my bundling, probably right about here. We'll say, again, using my thumb, we'll use about maybe 2 inches up and then 2 inches below to finish. And then we can finish on the other end, pretty much how we started, okay? If you follow me. So, again, I could use a piece of charcoal or I can eyeball it. And right now I'm using a Sharpie. Not very primitive, but it's going to work for this demo. And then an approximation down here. Doesn't have to be exact. It has to be somewhat. Because if we did everything correctly, the whole arc of the bow should be a nice D shape. Okay? Or, somewhat like a D shape. And that may be less or more. Okay? So I'm basically going to take some cordage and do the whole process of, if you don't have enough cordage, what you may need is just two wraps on each side. So maybe then you know where to grip in the middle. Okay, so just to give you some ideas, you don't probably have to wrap the whole thing, and you probably don't have to wrap it that long, right? And what I'm looking at here is we're looking at approximately like 8 inches of wrapping, from what I see, and that's, again, these are all approximations. So 7 to 8 inches of wrapping. That's a lot of cordage. So you use what you need to use just to wrangle down the middle. All right. So I'll do that part here, and then I'll meet you on the other side. Alright, so I've got the middle bounding part of our bundle bow all set for the most part. Again, I didn't have to use as much. I could have, bound on the top side and the bottom side of my grip to save cordage, but I just went on ahead and did it through for stability. Because there is going to be a portion where we're going to have to start bending the stick. Or the sticks, the bundle. Alright, so just like we did before, where I bound the top and the shorter staves to the longer staves, we're going to do on this end as well. So these are still have to be bound together here, like that, and then the ends are gonna have to be bound together 2 inches from the tip. All right, so we still got a lot more binding. Again, you can get an idea of how much quarters you would need or resources you would need to do such a type of bow. It's better, it's romantic to go out and I'm gonna make me a bow and arrow or a crossbow or whatever, and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna take down a 120 pound white-tailed deer. Yeah, it's very romantic, you know, but then you got to process that deer. Hopefully you don't have to fight off other predators that might want to try to take that deer from you, etc., etc. Your energy are best set in that type of scenario. Hopefully there's a water source around, fishing, fish traps, fish weirs, which hopefully we'll get into later on. You know, trapping, making traps, snares. That's going to be your best bet over the long run, because traps will always be working for you while you're doing other things. Hunting, stock hunting, especially sit hunting, takes up time and resources. And then once you down the animal, there's processing the animal, getting it back to camp, yada yada yada. But anyways, still doing this for just in case. It's good to have those skills in case you need it. Okay, so as you can see, I've bound the longer staves first on the opposite end, as we're finishing up the binding process. Now I'm going to bind the shorter staves into it, so it becomes one solid piece that we should be able to bend, and the top ends we can knock, and it should bend either way into a nice D shape once we have the knocks cut in. Okay, so I'm going to bind this up over here just like we did on the opposite end, and we should be done with the binding process. So what I'm going to do is take the stave, our bundle bow here, and I'm going to try to work it against the wall here, hopefully not without marring it, and kind of bending it, you know, getting it used to working, finding out where the tight spots are, and getting it used to being worked together. Okay, both top and bottom. So that's essentially how it's supposed to work. So hopefully this is coming out on camera pretty well. Well, that's what I'm trying to do, is get everything in alignment and get everything straight. What we want to do is we want to do the bowline knot or bowline loop. And basically what it is you make a loop or a bite, as they call it. I'm gonna exaggerate a bit. Okay, like that. And so this is the standing end, and then this right here is the running end, as far as knotting parlance is concerned, right? So the standing end, the running end. This is the one we're going to manipulate. So you make a loop, and the axiom is the rabbit comes up out of the hole, around the tree, which is the standing end, and back into the hole. Okay, and you can adjust it. I'm not going to tie it tight yet, because I want to make sure that this is going to fit on one end of our bundle bow, so I can easily slide it on and off when necessary, right? So I'm going to take this, make sure it's big enough but yet small enough that it kind of fits. I can slide it on, and roll it, and it'll seat and not overset. Okay, it could probably be a little smaller. I'm just going to tighten it on the thicker parts, and so when I roll it on here, with the idea is the reason why we made the knocks was so that it would sit and catch. Okay, you get that? So it's being caught. Okay, so it shouldn't go anywhere, but then when it's time to release it, it should come off fairly easy. Okay, I may make it a slightly smaller so that it can have time to stretch over time. Alright, so I've successfully, we did the bowline knot for this end here, and there's some adjustments that need to be made. And then I've just kind of lashed it here to give me an approximation of where I need to do the other bowline knot on the other end. And what we want ideally is, hand to thumb. Alright, this will adjust over time. The idea is to make this shorter. This is bending on the stress pretty well. So hopefully we can, if I just take my time and be patient, we'll get something, right? But the thing is that here's what you want, right? And maybe you can hear this, right? All right, you can hear. Very similar to a berimbau, which is a Afro-Brazilian instrument used in the Afro-Brazilian martial art of capoeira. And the instrument itself is approximately this long. I think it's actually 6 feet. And there's a gourd that makes a resonator. And you hit it with a stick like this, and you have a cachiche, which is a rattle. And there's a beat to it. Anyways, more on that if we get to that far. But you want something that sounds taunt. Okay, that'll shoot an arrow. I can tell already. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to make adjustments, and hopefully we have a finished product that can give us this same sound. Then we'll be ready to test it. Alright, so here is our rustic bundle bow with some arrows we're going to put down range just to test it out. It comes at a very light, based on the dimensions of the staves I used, at a very light, like 40 pounds, 38 pounds. They take down a rabbit. But again, it depends on the dimensions of the staves that you're going to use. So we're just going to put some downrange just to test it. I've got some commercial arrows and a couple of the pine needle fletched arrows that I made a couple of days ago. And we'll just see what happens before my battery runs out. See again, if I can get this on camera. I was talking about in our last video, this yellow one is the cock feather that goes up. So it's in alignment with the bowstring. These blue ones are the secondary arrow fletching that just should slide along the bow body itself. Pine needle fletching.